All right. I call to order this January meeting of the Public Works Commission. Commissioner Britton, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can we have roll call?
Commissioner Britton,
Present.
Commissioner Dunbaben,
Babin, present.
Babin,
Present.
Commissioner Legvold,
Present.
Commissioner Grethen,
Here.
Vice Chairperson, my bad, my Vice Chairperson.
Commissioner's fine, then I am here.
Chairperson Hayes.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next is approval of the agenda. Do we have any comments or a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Britton,
Yes.
Commissioner Dunbaben,
Babin?
Babin, sorry,
Yes.
Commissioner Legvold,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Grethen,
Yes.
Chairperson Hayes.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. Do we have any announcements? Anyone?
No.
I have one. On January 22nd, the city will be holding a community meeting regarding the civic facilities projects stakeholder meeting. It is going to be held in City Hall chambers from 6 to 8 p.m. As many know, the city is looking into improving its city facilities, and this is a great opportunity for the public to learn something and get their input heard. I think, unless anybody has anything else, I think that is it for announcements. And next we have presentations.
Thank you, Chairperson Hayes. This evening, we have a presentation for LA County Sanitation District. We have several representatives here to talk about a variety of projects that they have ongoing.
Good evening, members of the Public Works Commission. Thank you for the invitation to be here today. My name is Maria Rosales Ramirez with the LA County Sanitation District in the Public Information Office. And today we have an overview presentation of who we are, in case you've never heard of us. It's very common. And then we'll be highlighting some of the projects that are either happening or going to happen in the city of Hermosa Beach. So, to start.
Say the microphone's not on.
Sorry.
Oh, thank you. Let's see, it's not moving. Oh, wait. No? Okay, thank you. Next. So just to start, who we are, the sanitation districts, we're a special district created specifically to manage wastewater and solid waste. We were formed in 1923, so we came after your city was incorporated. And currently, we serve 5.5 million residents within LA County. That's what we do. We treat wastewater, but by doing that, we also produce recycled water, green energy, and fertilizer compost. We also have a solid waste component where we manage almost 2 million tons of LA County solid waste. And in doing that, we also produce green energy and have a large food waste recycling operation as well. Also, as of 2016, we also have stormwater diverted flows where we help cities kind of manage their stormwater, their dry weather flow to recycle that water and capture. Our spatial district is comprised of 1,700 employees, and we have an annual budget of around $1 billion. Next slide, please. When we started in 1923, our mission was to manage and treat wastewater, but over time, our mission has evolved with the needs of LA County, which now include converting waste into resources. That's kind of our core. We take in wastewater and solid waste, and we make recycled water, green energy, and fertilizer. So we're very proud of what we accomplished and how we can serve LA County this way. Next slide, please. So this is a map of our service area. You can see it's every color that we have. We go as far north as Lancaster and Palmdale, all the way down to Palos Verdes and the South Bay cities, of course, all the way up to the eastern part of our border up against San Bernardino. So 78 cities and unincorporated territories within the LA County. And actually, the mayors of the cities are actually on our board. So we call him Director Francois. He's here from Hermosa Beach. We had our board meeting with him today. Next slide, please. So now we're going to get into operations and what exactly we do. Starting with wastewater, our next slide. This is a map of our facilities. Again, any triangle that we have is a water recycling facility where we take in sewage and we recycled water for reuse locally. So you can see we have a network of facilities. Connecting them is blue lines, which are trunk sewers. Those are large-scale sewers. We have 1,400 miles of sewers that kind of connect our facilities. You can see the bulk of our area is the lower part of LA County, where the majority of the LA County residents are. Next slide. And just a little bit to get into sewers. There's a little bit to know here. Most of the homeowners and businesses own the laterals. Then there's smaller local city sewers that are maintained either by the public works or by the city. And then we are in charge of the large regional sewers, so the big sewers. Again, our sewers are pretty big because we handle the flow for large volumes of multiple cities. Next slide, please. No, it's not supposed to do that. Let's see. Oh, there we go. So what happens with the wastewater? Once it's cleaned, it's actually recycled water. And here we know it doesn't rain that often, atmospheric events aside, it doesn't rain that often here in Southern California. So we've actually had a partnership with the Water Replenishment District and the LA County Public Works to send this water to spreading grounds, which we're showing here is the San Gabriel spreading grounds near Pico Rivera, where pretty much the clean water is put into the ground to replenish our groundwater aquifers and store it for future use. And this actually just contributes to our quality of life. So we're actually one of the largest recyclers of water here in the US. And when we talk about how the water is reused, groundwater recharge is our largest way we reuse the water, 60% of it. But there's also landscape irrigation. If you've ever seen these purple signs at parks or golf courses that say recycled water, do not drink, it's probably our water, if it's local. But we also have industrial users. There's people that use the water for, their manufacturing process, and up in the Lancaster and Palmdale area, we also have farming operations for cattle, and also environmental uses up north. So that's kind of our wastewater history. Next slide. I'm really happy to share this site. So this slide kind of shows our growth of our water reuse sites throughout LA County, and we have really close to 1,000. So these are multiple sites that use our water, and you can see, actually, I don't show it here, but over time, when there's a drought, you see the peak go up, and we help support LA County this way. Next slide. So now that was a brief overview on our wastewater side. Now I'm going to jump over to solid waste management, which is our trash side. So next slide. This is a map showing our, again, LA County and a network of our solid waste facilities, which include landfills, recycling centers, and transfer station. We started out with a lot in the 50s, but currently we have 2 open landfills, Calabasas Landfill in Calabasas, and Shoal Canyon, which is near Eagle Rock. We also have a transfer station in Southgate and a materials recovery facility in Whittier. Then we have other sites that are closed right now. Next slide, please. Oh, it's taking long because it's a video. That's what's going on. It's okay. I'll just mention it. At the heart of our solid waste system is disposal. So that will be a landfill. And I was hoping it would show by now, but it's not. So it's okay. It's landfill, which is the concept of burying trash. Next slide, please. When we bury the trash, many people don't know that in the absence of oxygen, anything carbon or anything organic can create methane or landfill gas, which has methane, and it's akin to natural gas. So a lot of our solid waste facilities, our landfills, have an energy component, a power plant attached to it. And this is our power plant in Whittier that's been creating green energy since 1983. So again, that's that component of taking something that someone thinks is trash and making something with it, in this case, energy. Next slide. Right now, our focus is on recycling. So this is a look at our materials recovery facility, our sort line there in Whittier. And again, this is a pretty automated process that has magnets, AI, it has wind chimes, it has lasers, it has a lot of stuff. And the goal is to, instead of just burying trash, we're able to recycle things that are recyclable: cardboard, paper, plastic, scrap metal, and that sort. And those are on the lower left side, there's these little boxes. Those are what we call bales, which is a recoverable commodity that can be then sent overseas to create new paper, new plastic, new cardboard. Next slide, please. Of course, the video's not working. Our latest venture in recycling is organics recycling, where we take food waste. You may have something in your city where you recycle food scraps, or you collect the food scraps from businesses or homes, hospitals. And we have a food waste recycling facility in Whittier and Carson, where we pretty much take the food scraps and are able to, for lack of a better word, blend them and introduce them into our wastewater treatment process to create more green energy. So that's actually a really cool thing, and that's one of the ways we're able to support the cities with the SB 1383 mandate that kicked into place in 2022. Next slide. So that was an overall look at the sanitation districts and kind of what we do on our mission. Right now, we're going to focus on some projects that are happening, will happen in Hermosa Beach. These are projects that are tied to our solid waste site, so maintaining the sewers. And we've kind of listed them there for you and kind of color-coded them. So first up is my colleague, Abbas Ismaili from our construction management, who's going to talk about the emergency sewer repair. Abbas?
Awesome. Thank you, Maria. Hi, good evening, council members. My name is Abbas Ismail. I'm a project manager / a resident engineer for LA County Sanitation Districts. I started with the district since last year, but I've been working in construction management for the past 10 years. My projects span from aviation, working at LAX on Tom Bradley Terminal and Bradley West. Worked on high-rise construction and K through 12 and higher ed as well. So our work is currently started with the emergency point repair that we had on 4th and Bayview, which I'm sure Joe had mentioned. It was the night work that we performed in mid-December. That was caused by a collapsed pipe due to our sewer line being eroded. And the erosion is caused by the sulfur gases. So usually you have your top crown of your sewer line mainly corrodes, because as the water comes up, it's the gases that really erode the concrete or clay sewer lines, which requires the rehabilitation. Okay, go to the next slide. Thank you. So that point repair opened us up to further CCTV cameras along our sewer line on Bayview, and what we found was that there's further deterioration to that reach that starts from 4th and Bayview all the way through 8th. Therefore, we made the decision to go ahead and do the lining of that reach between 4th and 8th to prevent another collapse. Because once the sewer line collapses, it erodes the soil underneath the asphalt. So when we did that repair in late December, we found that the entire sand below and all the dirt had eroded away and it gets carried down the sewer line. So we made the repair overnight. Everything was successful. We backfilled, patched the asphalt, and now we're back. And we spent December planning with the public works team, submitting the traffic control plans, submitting the phasing plan. What we came up with is to phase the work to minimize the impact on the residents. So that sewer line from 4th all the way to 10th, but the entire reach in Hermosa Beach is almost 100 years old. So it's been deteriorating because of the sulfur gases, and in order to do the rehabilitation, instead of trenching for the past 50 years, we've been doing CIPP lining, which is we put in a bag of, it's either reinforced fiberglass or in this case, it's going to be a fiberglass resin. So once we put the bag in and we push it through and work only over the manhole. But the hardest part, which is affecting the residents right now, we started working on Mondays, is the bypass. So the bypass is going to be running, as you can see in your screens, is the orange line. It's going to be above ground in orange, and then we're trenching this week at the intersections on 6th and Monterey, and then tomorrow into Thursday, into Friday, we're going to be trenching on 8th and Monterey, and then on Friday into Saturday, more than likely we're working Saturday as well, on 10th, and then going down 10th Street. So at the intersections, we'll be underground. And while we're working, we're maintaining access to all the residents into their homes as well. And then next week, we're going to come in and install the bypass. And I've provided pictures, example photos of what a bypass is, how it's going to look like once it's complete. And then, but I can assure you, once the bypass is in, we're diverting the sewer line to a downstream manhole that's going to allow us to line it. The lining is a very quick and painless process. It takes us 1 day to line the reach. So we have 3 reaches from number 64 to 63. That's completed in 3-4 hours. And then we just do a hot water cure overnight. And it's just a single box truck over the manhole. And the only impact really is just the smell. And then we'll allow residents to come in and out of their driveway because it's just a small box truck that's going to be parked on Bayview. And that will be completed over 5 days. But as I stated, the most painful process for residents is the bypass. And once the bypass is installed along Monterey, they'll only be able to make a right turn out of their driveway. But how we're gonna position the bypass is allow the north and south traffic keep moving and keep intersections open as well. But we're offsetting in a manner where we're maximizing parking for the residents either on the east or west side. And I've also included pictures in the presentation illustrating which side of the parking is going to remain open and which side is going to be taken over throughout the duration of the project, which we anticipate to demobilize by February the 14th. So if I can go to the next slide, please. Now, the expected construction impacts for the project: access, we're maintaining sidewalks to all the residents. We're not affecting their driveway entrances. For example, this past week, I was out there with my inspector. While we're doing our saw cutting, while we're doing trenching, we're allowing residents to drive in along Monterey, go into their homes. So we're minimizing the impacts and only impacting parking from 7:30 in the morning until 4:30 p.m. And for example, on Tuesday, actually, we had a car parked along 10th Street. You know, I'm the type of person where I don't want to, tow a vehicle. It's we're already there affecting residents, so we knocked on doors, couldn't find the owner, but we called the city inspector. She was able to coordinate with parking enforcement, just notified the owner, and we were able to get it moved. So we don't want to tow any vehicles. We're there just to get our work done and cooperate the most with your residents. In regards to personnel, I myself and my inspectors, we knocked on doors the week before, handed out flyers to all the residents along Monterey Boulevard, along Bayview. We went 1 block past 4th, and then we worked our way down 4th between 10th and one block past 10th Street as well to 11th. Just to talk to neighbors, tell them about the impact, tell them how it's going to affect them as well, and just answer any questions. And I'm there every day as well with my inspector. People come out of their houses. I'm a friendly person, so I just answer any questions they have, take the time to to explain it better. In regards to permitting, we submitted traffic control plans to the Public Works Department. We also submitted the phasing plan as well. So the phasing plan, we're going to minimize the impact to the residents by working 2 days in one block and then flip-flopping and flipping over to the next block and then flipping to the next block. So it's going to help alleviate all the pain that construction usually comes with. Parking impacts, as I stated, I'm going to show as well illustrations on how we're going to be shifting the bypass along the middle of the street to allow to maximize the parking. Because what I've noticed is when I was looking at the traffic control plan, it shows the driveways, and when there's more driveway entrance, this means less parking. So we came up with a solution where we're going to allow parking on one side and take away parking on the other, where there are less parking spots, and throughout the duration of the bypass, that's going to be there. So, and then once we're done with lighting, that will allow us to demobilize. If I go to the next slide, please. Alrighty. In regards to the timeline, December is when we inspected our sewer lines. We found the collapsed sewer. We did the point repair overnight. And then that started the permitting process in regards to coordinating with the Public Works Department in regards to approving our lining work as well as the bypass. We included the lining, as I stated, because we don't want another collapse. Based on our CCTV cams, we found that a lot of that concrete reinforced pipe, there's rebar sticking out. It's really deteriorated. So in order to protect all of our citizens in Hermosa Beach for safety, we want to line it now prior to the next project that comes up in 2026. That's going to align all of the reaches. So we mobilized on this past Monday. We saw cut it on Tuesday. Today we're trenching on 6th and Monterey. We're going to continue trenching tomorrow into Friday, and then it depends how well it goes on Friday. We'll probably be out there on Saturday as well. But the trenching is in order to get the pipe underground at the intersections. And I have, like I said, I have pictures showing what a bypass is, how a truck looks like over the manhole. So it's going to make a lot more sense once I have that on the screen. Now, and then we'll be done with the bypass by the 31st of January. On February 3rd, Monday, is when the lining starts. So we've diverted the sewer line. We're going to clean this. We're going to do pre-CCTV, clean the sewer lines, and line it. So one reach at a time. So it should be in 5 days. We'll be done with those reaches. By February 7th, we'll be done with the lining, and then we'll start demobilizing. And for Valentine's Day, we'll be out of the city. We'll be demobilized, and hopefully the residents are happy celebrating. If I can get the next slide. Alrighty, so here are some examples that I've included in the presentation. So as you can see here, we're going to be, and this is exactly how it's going to look like. We got 2 8-inch HTP, which is high density polyethylene. This is some tough pipe. We in La Puente, we actually had a box truck run over it, and I'm happy to say that nothing happened to the pipe. They're more damage to the box truck itself rather than our pipeline. So I can assure you that this is some really tough material. It's going to go underground at the intersections, as I noted in blue. 6th and Monterey, 8th and Monterey, and 10th and Monterey. We're going to go underground starting from 10th and then go down 10th Street and then discharge into manhole number 3060. So we're going to first set up our discharge pipes, our bypass lines first along Monterey. And then the last thing is going to be the pumps. The pumps are diesel powered, but they're enclosed. So you have about 60 to 70 decibels of noise, which is it's like a constant hum. And then they're 24 hours monitored. So they're powered by diesel, but we're going to have crew out here 24 hours, refilling with the diesel as well if everyone's short of fuel. And ensuring that there's no overflow upstream coming from Hondo. And the reason why we're doing 2 pipes is that we always have a primary and a secondary, because the Hondo pumping plant, when that kicks on, I've looked down the manhole. The flow does increase significantly. So, we're close to the beach. We want to make sure that we're addressing all the risk, being as risk averse as possible. If I can go to the next slide. All righty, so once we've trenched across the intersections, when we place the pipe in the ground, and that's when we backfill and then put trench plates over the pipe across the intersections. So now we've dug it out. Like today we're digging, and then next week we're going to come in, pull those trench plates, put the pipe in the ground, and like I mentioned before, we're going to work in phases, so block by block, and so minimize the impact to the residents. Next slide. Alrighty, so this is and this is exactly how it's going to look like. It's 2 pipes running side by side to each other, and then delineated with cones. And it's going to run in the center of the street. And like I said, we're going to offset it between 4th and 6th. We're going to offset it towards the east because there's more parking on the west side. And then once we get to 6th and 8th, we're going to offset it to the west because there's more parking on the east side. And then again, from 8th and 10th, we're going to offset it close to the west side to allow for parking on the east side. And what we've actually also accounted for is we're going to go 12 feet wide for the drive lane, plus an extra about 5 to 4 feet for cars to be able to safely turn out of their driveways as cars are passing by. So we're doing our best to take care of the residents of Hermosa Beach as best as possible to keep everybody safe. If I can go to the next slide. Now here is an example of the box truck that I mentioned. So once we have the bypass installed, we're discharging to the downstream manhole number 3060. That's when the easiest part of the job is we're going to have 1 box truck over the manhole per day, and it's only going to be there for 3 or 4 hours. But we're going to have but we're going to be pumping out water, hot water to cure the liner. So we'll starting on February 3rd with the lining, and then we'll be done by the 7th. Next slide. Now, like I mentioned earlier, we're phasing it out. We're working on Monday, Tuesday. Today, we were also on 6th Street, trenching. And then tomorrow, we're going to be working over at 8th and 10th. And then Friday, possibly into Saturday, we'll be trenching across 10th, and then across 10th and down 10th Avenue to discharge into the manhole that's in the corner of Bayview and 10th. I talked to the resident that's in the corner where the manhole is. He's cool with it. He's a really chill guy. We explained to him the process, what's going to happen, how it's going to affect him. So we're doing our best to over-communicate, just make sure everybody's there's no surprises. Can you go to the next slide? Now, once the trenching is complete, next week is when our bypass contractor is going to mobilize. So, like I said, we're going to work block by block. So once we complete 1 block, and then flip over to just between 6th and 8th, and then finally we'll work on the block after. And these 2 slides, this slide and the slide before, I attached them to the flyer. So both maps are on that flyer, which we handed out to the residents. And it illustrates when is parking going to be taken away, from what time to what time, and we'll be posting no parking signs 72 hours prior to moving into the area, just so all the residents are aware of what's of the restrictions. Can I get the next slide? Alrighty, so that's the emergency project will be happening between now and February 14th. This is part of a larger project planning to start in 2026. But like I said before, we're trying to mitigate the possibility of another sinkhole happening, another collapse due to the deteriorating pipe. So I'm going to pass it on to Mr. Artin. He's going to tell us all about the project that's coming up. All right, thank you, Artin.
All right. Thank you, Abbas. Thank you, commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here, provide an update. So this next project is Oh, is that better? This next project is similar to the previous one. It's essentially more of the same. So everything you saw there, the bypass lines, the trenching, the partial parking restriction, all of that still applies here. The map on your screen, that shows all of Hermosa Beach, and our sewer actually spans the whole city going north to south. So toward the upper end of that picture is your border with Manhattan Beach, and the sewer line you can see kind of snaking down south, and it continues down into Redondo Beach. Between the previous project and this one, we'll be rehabilitating almost that entire length. The previous project is about 1,000 feet of sewer, and this project is about 8,000 feet. So once we're through, your sewer through all of Hermosa Beach will be practically brand new. As the boss mentioned, it's about a 100-year-old sewer constructed in the 1920s. It's a concrete sewer. It's deteriorated over time like any concrete would if it was that old. And the way we rehabilitate this is with a cured-in-place pipeliner. And so that is essentially creating a new pipe inside of the existing pipe. Next slide, please. Okay, so a lot of similar impacts for this project. Traffic-wise, most of the work is along 4 streets: Hermosa Avenue, Palm Drive, Manhattan Avenue, and Bayview Drive. The work will be daytime, just like the current work that's going on. As you saw before, there are some limited lane closures. The way that typically looks is you close down one lane for the construction equipment, and then you have no parking next to it, and that gives you room for traffic to drive through. There is some work in very narrow streets, specifically Palm Drive and Bayview Drive, where once you have your construction set up, there's not really enough room to have traffic through. So there you would most likely need a partial street closure just for that block or so where the work is taking place. As far as personnel, we try to give a lot of notice to the residents. There's signs posted with contact information. Anytime there's actual construction going on, there's a district inspector from our agency who's there to oversee things. So they're one point of contact. During off hours when there's no work going on, there's still a 24/7 phone number where residents or anybody can call and get in touch with us. As far as interruptions to service, along that 8,000 feet of sewer that I mentioned, there are a total of 15 or so properties that are directly connected. And for those properties, on the day of work, they will not have service, meaning they can't use their drains. So for part of a day, there's an interruption in service. For those properties, what we do is provide portable restrooms and hand washing stations, so they still have that available. Next slide, please. This is a rough timeline. We're talking about work that's about a year away, so it's hard to be extremely precise, but we're finishing up the design of the project. In August or so, we will select a contractor to do the work. They'll get their plans together early next year, February or so. We think the actual physical construction will begin. And then it's about 3 months of work, meaning we finish in May, roughly. Keep in mind the 3 months is not all 8,000 feet every day for 3 months. It goes section by section, so the impacts are really a small area, and then that kind of moves down along the sewer. Next slide, please. Okay, so that was a brief overview of that project. We'll be shifting gears a little bit to a different type of work that my coworker Leo will fill you in on.
Thank you, Artin. Hello, commissioners. My name is Leo Juarez. I am a civil engineer in the design section and sewer design section at the sanitation districts. Like Artin mentioned, this is a different type of project. This is not a CIPP project. This is a force main replacement project. Just a little history on Redondo pumping plant, which is shown on the left there at the bottom on Redondo Street. It's actually located in the city of Redondo Beach. It was built in 1970, and it was built with one force main at the time. And in about 1991, they built a secondary force main because the original force main was failing. Now, since 1991, the original force main has been out of service this whole time. So this particular pumping plant is only operating with one force main. And at the districts and in general, the standard practice is to have redundancy at a pumping plant. So we want to build that second force main. Luckily, we have an existing alignment from the original force main. So that's why you note in the slide, we're going to remove that old force main and replace it with a brand new HDPE force main, as Habas, this really powerful, really strong pipe that'll last a really long time. All of this work, as it relates to the city of Hermosa Beach, is within the public right-of-way along Monterey Boulevard, going north and south, you see. The alignment is on the west side of the road. It also includes new inspection manholes. There's going to be one located within the city of Redondo Beach, along the Hermosa Beach, sorry, within the alignment, and one in the city of Redondo Beach. We are going to rehabilitate a couple of our manholes, what we call a breakover manhole. Essentially, what a breakover manhole is, just a regular manhole. It's where the force main ends. Typically, as you know, sewers are gravity-based. It flows from a high point to a low point, and that's how sewers are generally designed and built. A force main, essentially, it's pressurized sewer. It acts like a water main, but for sewage. And that's the main difference here. So a breakover manhole is a point where it transitions from pressure to gravity, so that it can drain to one of our treatment facilities. Next slide, please. So what are the expected construction impacts? This type of project is all open trench. The whole 1,300 linear feet will need to be excavated and trenched and opened up. So the traffic is going to be, the traffic will be impacted on Monterey Boulevard and Redondo Street, but the work is only going to be during daytime hours. Okay? There is opportunities to use plates for after hours if necessary, and that could be figured out when the contractor submits for permits and the city gets a chance to review all the documents. There will be limited side street closures. As Abbas mentioned on some of his slides, we have to trench across a couple of intersections. And in order to do that, we will likely have limited side street closures in order to do that. But again, we can plate afterwards for after hours, so to allow traffic to flow. There will be parking restrictions in the construction zones. All of these, this particular project is going to be built in pieces or in phases. It's not going to be the entire 1,300 linear feet. I suspect that they could close off a small construction zone of up to 100 feet at a time or less, and work their way down or up as they're building the force main. The force main is going to be the first thing that they do on this particular project. There are other components to the project that relate to the pumping plant, but those are in the city of Redondo Beach. Again, the personnel is similar to what Arden says. There will be signs posted for the project. We have our own inspectors full-time on site at all times, and the residents can call that same number in case they need help for whatever, 24/7. Now, this particular project, there's no bypass. It's not like the other projects. Any bypass that is occurring at the pumping plant. There won't be any bypass lines in the street at all. Next slide, please. So let's talk about the timeline or schedule. This particular project has been in design a couple of years. We actually have a consultant working on this project, and the district is managing the consultant's work. Award of contract is set to occur actually next week for a contractor to start the work. And the tentative start of physical construction, we're tentatively scheduled for April of this year with a completion time of January of next year. Okay? And that concludes my part of the presentation. You guys have any questions? We're here.
I have the last slide. I just wanted to point something out. If you liked our overview of the presentation that we gave today, not the specific projects, but just the overview on the districts, we do have an outreach program where we can offer this presentation to schools, colleges, high schools, citizen groups. as well as we invite any school or the members of the Public Works Commission to visit our facilities. If there are any questions, we've put in our public information contact phone number and email. But what I wanted to point out was our website. If you go to wlacsd.org/construction, any construction notice that's given to our residents is uploaded there, and it will show for any active project. So anything that we hand out to the residents will be posted there when we're ready to start physical construction. But the cool thing about it is we make it available in multiple languages as well to hit the demographic of many cities. So I believe the only project that's there right now is the emergency project, but as the other projects move forward, they'll be posted there as well. So with that, now we're ready to answer questions if you have any. Or not, it's okay too.
Anybody? David?
Yeah, oh,
Go ahead.
I did.
In regards to the sewer line, there's no impacts to the residents. They can flush their toilets, use the sink, the kitchen. So it's because Hermosa Beach has their own sewer line, so this is just a main trunk sewer. So we're not there's no impacts at all to any of the residents in regards to be able to flush. So I just want to reiterate that.
I was just curious about the area where there is an impact to the residents, where y'all were going to install the toilets and the sinks. Does the sanitation district, that doesn't take the wastewater from the kitchens too, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, and everything that goes down your drain.
You're right.
Yeah.
So so they can't use their sinks or any sinks or
That's right.
toilets?
That's right.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, for part of a day.
Okay. I think it's great that y'all are installing new pipes, but
Yeah, Yep.
hopefully the residents are happy once it's finished in that particular area. Thank you.
yeah, I think they won't notice the difference, but you'll have a new sewer.
That was mine.
More of just a curiosity. I was under perhaps a mistaken impression that wastewater, once it's going down away from the treatment and towards the ocean, was free from sulfur and other impurities. But maybe that's legacy, or before things were treated, or?
It would be after treatment, but whatever's in the sewer leaving your house, that's got everything in it.
Oh, right,
It's
right,
got to
right.
get to the plant, get treated, and then it's much, much cleaner.
Got it. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I work on Los Coyotes. I got a project going on Los Coyotes treatment plant where we're replacing the process air compressor, so that reduces the odors. And that's where for example, it's one treatment plant where we take the majority of the water, and then the rest of the sewage goes to our main water treatment plant, which is in Carson, the AK Warren facility. So that main trunk sewer, all of them lead in the South Bay goes to Carson, but San Gabriel Valley and the majority of the other counties, there's water reclamation where they reduce the load on Carson by treating the water and then either distributing it to the channels for percolation into the groundwater or selling it back to the municipalities for reuse.
Is Hyperion and Scattergood yours, or is that something else?
Hyperion is City of Los Angeles.
Yeah, we get that question a lot. So City of LA has their own network, Tillman, Hyperion. Our AK Warren facility is our Hyperion. So the
Okay.
largest one, it's just
it.
not run by us.
Got it. Thank you.
I like to think of ourselves as a better sanitation.
All right. Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to go ahead and ask some questions that are related to service, and I'm glad you anticipated one of mine, and I'll ask them in a way that might also help us understand a little bit about the architecture of the sewer system. And so I'll probably touch on all three of these projects a little bit. So first of all, for the force main, since you're adding some extra redundant functionality, I assume there's no service impact whatsoever to that, correct?
Yeah, there's no connections to that force main. It
Right.
just goes from the pumping plant to that manhole and then on through gravity.
Okay, and then next I'll touch on the the emergency repairs, you anticipated my question. I think you said something to the effect that the homes don't actually connect directly to the trunk. They go through, for lack, I don't know if I call them secondary lines. So there's no service interruption. I assume that those lines can handle whatever they need to in the time before those secondary lines then need the functionality of the repaired trunk?
Yeah, exactly. So we have flow meters in every manhole where we've taken data and over the year. So we have the peak flow data and then just regular flow data. So we've calculated out. So the reason why we're doing 2 8-inch is because we calculated out the discharge rate based on the flow. So your peak flow is usually people are getting ready for work in the morning and then coming back from work. So around 6:30, 7 o'clock is a peak, and it peaks again around between 5 and 7 p.m. So yeah, we've done the calcs, and that's the reason why we sized it to 8 inches. But in regards to your second question was, Hermosa Beach has their own sewer line system. So
Right.
then they just charge into our trunk sewer further downstream.
Okay, so and then that's so the function of the purpose of the bypass is just to have that trunk functionality. That you're not going to try to attach anything to the trunk. It's just going to go from strictly a bypass, and everything else will just temporarily flow within the capacity of those secondary and lateral lines in the meantime. Okay, and then, oh,
So the bypass that Awas is talking about is going to take all of the city's local flow and basically move it further downstream, so our trunk is just dry, so that we can do
Right.
the CIPP work.
right. Okay, and now I'll touch on the general rehabilitation South Bay Cities project. In that case, I heard that there could be some cases for perhaps a day at a time per home. There could be some service interruption. So architecturally, does that mean? Maybe you can just explain that,
Sure.
You know, how that's in contrast to the case for the emergency case.
So the difference would be that for those 15 or so properties, their sewer line from their house goes directly to our sewer rather than the City of Hermosa Beach sewer. And so that's really the difference. So we can't have any flow going into our sewer while we're trying to do the lining. And that's why they can't use their sink or their shower or their toilet.
Okay, so that makes sense. And architecturally, it means there are a few rare exceptions, but
Yeah.
they're more the exception
It's the exception.
than,
yeah.
than the rule. So that's good to know. And then getting back to the bypass, you showed where you had the bypass above ground, and then you're showing some trenching segments against at streets. Is that so the cross streets continue to have traffic flow?
Yes, sir, exactly. Yeah, we're doing our best to minimize the impact to the residents, so that's the reason. You're absolutely right, sir. The reason why we're doing the trenching is to go underground, and what's beautiful about it is that we're going to go 25 feet before the crosswalk to allow for the street sweepers as well as the garbage trucks to make that wide right turn and to make a safe left turn as well. So we're going to go 25 feet before the crosswalk and then 25 feet past the crosswalk at each intersection to account for left turns, to account for street sweepers, garbage trucks, construction trucks as well. So, we're doing our best to anticipate and minimize the impacts.
And then I'll just conclude with a comment to refresh some of our minds that, remember, we reviewed the sewer master plan for our city, and you've probably seen some maps that show the architecture in that sense and shows that the county owns the main trunk and that we pretty much have the rest of it. And so, and I'll take the opportunity to say, yeah, this is great that you're staying on top of things. And I guess one other question does come to mind. In what sense is this one segment, it's called an emergency, and in one sense you call it emergency, but how does that differ from just, we do our routine inspections, and I guess why is it called an emergency is my question.
Yeah, it's to prevent a collapse. So that sewer line it's deteriorated significantly within those reaches, and it can collapse during high flow. So right now in winter, we consider a high flow due to rain. And in some cases, we do get rainwater into our sewer lines, and that increases the flow. So we're trying to prevent another collapse and another.
And if I can add to it, normally a sanitation district's design and repair project is a multi-year project. It can be a year in design, then it goes into a construction, a bid gets awarded, we plan ahead. In this case, due to the nature of the repair that's needed, it got fast-tracked. I mean, this was picked up in December, and now they're starting. So it's a compressed timeline due to this, we want to address it now to avoid anything. I mean, we just want to be on top of it, like you mentioned. So that's kind of like the key difference, why it's an emergency project.
I guess we're fortunate, I mean, that we found it when we did then, and I assume that one of the problems with it collapsing is then you have all kinds of trenching and major repairs versus the lining.
It doesn't need to get to that. I don't know if we mentioned that normally we have, part of our routine inspection is to do monitoring of our sewer lines at low flow, so you're able to see the pipes. And that's when I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that's when it was picked up that, this section it's not the same as the other ones, it's a little worse. We need to act fast on this one, especially before the rain season starts. So I believe that's one of those aspects there, correct.
And so, of course, the linings you add have to have some sort of structural integrity of their own, in their own right, since potential collapse was the initial issue causing the emergency of sorts.
Yeah, we don't take those chances, hence we're moving fast on this one.
Thank you.
All right, I've got a couple of quick ones. So the current pipe has lasted about 100 years. How long does this lining process extend the life?
125?
No, we designed the CIPP in our standard specifications. It's a 50-year design life. However, I feel very strongly that it's going to last more than 50 years.
And that's for both the line pipe and the new HDPE?
So we design our CIPP, we're very conservative at the districts. There's different ways to design your CIPP thickness. We don't consider the existing host pipe. So it's acting on its own, usually. I'm sure that's how we design CIP. So that CIPP liner can take all the load on its own. But now you're talking about a hose pipe that's concrete. You still have some inches left. So that's going to extend the life of that structure.
And so how thick is what you're adding to the pipe?
Millimeter, like 7
It's 15 millimeters.
15 millimeters, yeah.
Yeah, 15 millimeters.
So-
For example, sorry to interrupt you, sir, if I may. So, for example, when we performed the repair for where it collapsed, we had like I mentioned during my presentation, that crown, it was completely missing. So we had a robot system go in and did a sectional liner repair. So it's reinforced fiberglass, balloons, and cures through UV. And that repair, and just, if I may remind you, the entire pipe is missing. So we filled that void up. We cut open a little hole in the asphalt because there's a void, and we filled it up with slurry. So, I made the decision, as a group, made the decision to go in 4-foot lifts when we did the back for slurry, but it carried that entire weight of all that slurry cement. So, and again, the concrete was completely missing from up top. So it's designed where it's supposed to support its own weight, and like Leo mentioned, completely ignoring the deteriorated original sewer line.
To give you a ballpark figure, the new liner is roughly half an inch thick.
Okay. And is that reduction in diameter matter?
If there's maybe a small drop in capacity, but typically not. Because you have a little drop in the diameter, but also you have a smoother pipe, and so that actually gives you more capacity. So they offset each other more or less.
Okay. And the next question is more for Joe. With all of this work they're going to be doing in town, they're going to be tearing up the streets. Are we doing anything to try to coordinate the street improvement program with what they're doing so we don't pave in front of them?
Absolutely. We've been in constant communication with the sanitation district since December, so they've been a wonderful partner in working through both emergencies that we've dealt with, the one in December, mid-December, and the current one, and we're actively working on planning the next piece. I think the one location that we've identified as a potential conflict with the upcoming paving project is where Monterey crosses Pier Avenue. So we are actively working with the sanitation district to see if they can also expedite that repair as an emergency to get it in before the paving, because we also have a very small window of time to pave that street without holding up the project.
Right. Okay.
In the other locations, we'll also continue to coordinate all the phasing and help work on getting the outreach and evaluate where it potentially conflicts with other projects. But right now, that's the one primary overlap. The other one is continued coordination with Cal Water. Most of the lining work on Bayview also coincides largely with the water line replacement work that Cal Water is doing on Bayview from 2nd to 8th. So the one delay that is going to be in that project is that they will likely hold off on final pavement restoration work on Bayview until after the sanitation district has completed the lining.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Does that escalate Bayview's, I mean, I imagine that street's going to be pretty tore up, so that they're going to get new paving sooner than they would have otherwise?
Yes, the work by the Cal Water is significant to the pavement. The lining that they do, that install a whole new water main and all the service connections. It's likely going to be practically a new road by the time they're done with it. The good news, the sanitation district's work isn't creating any additional trenching or excavation, but right now it's just about having crews on top of each other. So a lot of construction impact overall to Bayview, but we're working to have everyone communicate and everyone's talking to sequence the work the best that we can.
One more question down there.
Yep, that's it. Go ahead. No? Anyone?
Yeah, I had a question that I was planning on asking before I heard anything. So it's coincident that we happen to have this water project going on down Bayview. We didn't happen to discover this problem with the sewer while we were digging to do the work for the water, did we?
I could answer that. So they were digging. It was a coincidence. Yeah, the Cal Water did not cause the collapse of the sewer line, but we did do our inspections and found the collapsed sewer. But luckily, I would, on a positive note, silver lining, Cal Water was there. We took a plate from them. We borrowed a plate from them and covered the area where it is collapsed. So I think of it as a positive coincidence. Just the fact that them working in the area, we were able to get a plate from them and safely put a trench plate and allows the residents at 215 4th Street to safely get out of his garage and in and out. So I see it as a blessing, the fact that they're working at the same time, but just complete coincidence.
Okay, so what I'll say in response to that is, let's be sure to expedite the other work that we're planning for the rest of the line, because if we were fortunate to catch that, who knows if we have a potential emergency elsewhere along the lines. So that's my input.
Yes, thank you. We can certainly bring it. Oh, sorry. So we'll take the recommendation back to our design team and our managers and see what can be done.
I think that's it for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your
Appreciate
time.
you guys coming in.
Thank you.
Moving along, I think we are at 7A Director's Update.
Okay, thank you. We're going to load up some slides momentarily, just 1 minute. So I'm going to, as we load up, if you go to the next slide, please. So I want to start off with a update on some of the fire response that we have. One thing that I would like to remind residents is that there is a restriction or a recommendation for the Public Health Department order to stop use of leaf blowers out of concern to mitigate air quality concerns by dusting up, kicking up ash that has fallen from the wildfires just north of us. One thing that we have been actively doing is working with Athens Services that operates does our street sweeping operations throughout the city. We have had some complaints, and staff has observed the dust clouds that are generated when the sweepers go over the ash that's fallen onto the streets. We've tried a number of different tactics to try to mitigate the dust kick-up. We are currently temporarily suspending street sweeping operations in all residential neighborhoods through the city, at least through Monday. We're tentatively scheduled to resume street sweeping on Tuesday, while we continue to troubleshoot some options to try to mitigate the dust cloud that does get kicked up when the sweeper goes through. And hopefully by then, the fires are calming down and we're seeing less ash falling in the city. I think it has definitely decelerated, so from what we were seeing last Wednesday, Thursday in town. Next. I briefly touched on the Cal Water water main installation work. So as we noted, we are working very closely with both the Sanitation District and Cal Water on this. All the water main itself has all been installed on Bayview Drive from 2nd to 8th, and they're currently working their way north from the southern limits on all the service connections. They've completed all the testing of the line. It's really just service connections now from 4th to 8th Street. Their work will be halted on Monday to observe the MLK holiday. And then, like I said, we're working on coordinating the final restoration. There is a possibility they might do some restoration between 2nd and 4th Street, which is south of the Sanitation District's project limits. But we're still working those details out with them, but it's likely all to follow once the sewer project is complete. Next. Just some updates of the many activities of our team has been very busy through the holidays, through November and December. Want to highlight a couple things that our O&M team has been doing. We replaced 2 of the South Park shade sails that had deteriorated. Our crews did that work in December. Next. We're currently working on annual reseeding efforts. You may have noticed the orange fencing out in front of the community center that was deployed. That is going to be in place through early March while we do our regular reseeding operations, and it does get active use, and so we got to do this on a regular basis. Clark Field is also receiving some reseeding, and that will be completed mid-February in time for Little League season. Next. We also did some exterior repainting. This is the Community Services building in front of Clark Field off Valley Drive. We did full exterior painting. The building was in great need of paint. I will let the commission know that this building is currently unoccupied. There was a small fire inside the building, electrical fire. While this work is being done, our engineering team is working on looking at a electrical panel upgrade so that we can get staff back into that building who have had to be temporarily relocated. Next. We also painted the exterior of City Hall. That was done almost simultaneously, slightly lagging. It's largely complete. There's still a little bit of detail work that they're working on the exterior that should be wrapped up later this month. Next. I wanted to give an update on the Loma Drive trees at 10th Street. I believe it had come up in public comment. We had given a highlight that there were three trees in the parkway that were removed without permit or approval. This is back in August. There was discussion at City Council at that meeting following the removal. We have been in contact with the resident that did remove them, as well as the adjacent property owner. And the city purchased and installed the new trees, and the resident that removed them will be receiving a bill for its replacement. Next. I also want to highlight that same day, we also planted 3 more trees off of Loma. This is at the entrance to Clark Field. There were a couple large trees that were there that were very invasive that have been, we had actual complaints from the neighbors when they were building their new home that they were seeing a lot of root intrusion into their foundation, but it was also tearing up city walkway, and it was close to an Edison vault transformer. So those were removed, and we've come back around now to replant that location and hopefully add some shade to that walkway in the future. And I think that's all I have in here for tonight. Happy to answer any questions on those items.
Any questions? Any questions or comments on the activity reports? All right. Then I think we're moving on to the, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was happy to see that they were putting in the cameras.
Microphone.
You know, I think that's something that's important nowadays. And
Microphone? Kathy? Mike?
I was happy to see that they are putting in cameras, and I thought that was important. I think that was the main thing that I saw in November. Lots of work.
Commissioner Legbold?
Yeah. First, I just wanted to say that I don't see any people riding their bikes now between the two barriers, which is great. But I was just going to ask, the first slide you showed, leaf blowers. The last few days as I've been driving around doing errands, I've noticed quite a few people outside essentially there are no leaves here. They're blowing dust in the air. Is this something that is new, or is this something, how is this being communicated out to the general population?
Thank you. So the image that, that I showed earlier, we actually did just do a social media post this evening to remind folks. Also, the LA Department of Public Health had issued an order, I believe at the end of last week, strongly recommending that folks don't use them to try to help mitigate the air quality impacts.
Yeah.
So it has gone out in a few methods, and the city tried to help spread the word, and as we're also doing again tonight.
Thank you.
Has that gone out to beaches and harbors? Because they're the ones who clean up around the restrooms, right? And I've seen them with electric blowers.
We can certainly reach out to them and see if they're still using them now, if they haven't gotten the word.
And does the street sweeper, the hold on the street sweeping, does that apply to the Strand as well?
Currently, we're planning on continuing it on the Strand for now, but it's going to be day to day as conditions change. For right now, the suspension is only in the residential neighborhoods, but we would continue on the Strand, but that could change as well.
Because I got behind one yesterday, and it was a big dust cloud right behind it, like way worse than usual.
Right, yeah, we've been asking them to, they've slowed down the speed at which they're moving to help try to mitigate it, but we are going to continue watching them and working with Athens cooperatively to come up with a plan to get the ash out of here in the safest way possible.
Okay, if there's no other questions, then I think we're on to the CIP status report.
All right. Thank you. If you go to the first slide, please. Okay. It has been a very active couple months. We have a number of projects in construction, and there's a lot coming, which I'll highlight throughout the presentation tonight. I want to touch on a number of the projects that are actively in construction, starting off with Clark Building, which we are making significant progress on. We're nearing halfway mark on that. There's a number of activities that we've completed. The picture on the right-hand side shows a lot of the exterior concrete work and ADA ramps that were completed towards the rear of the building. And you can see the new ADA access that would also serve as the lawn bowling facility as well. It was kind of a dual-purpose ramp that was put in, but we are making significant progress on the project. Next slide. Just some more pictures to highlight some of the completed activities, some of the underground plumbing. The photo in the middle is actually the kitchen. If you saw the photo at the beginning of the project, there was no floor. You could actually see dirt in there. So we've actually got the plumbing in, and there is a floor now in the kitchen, which to me is a huge amount of progress for that room alone. We've completed all the interior framing, all the demolition, the framing, as well as we've all the furring out of the walls as well in the interior. Next. And there's a number of ongoing activities. They've shifted on to the HVAC and continuing on with the hardscape work that's now shifted towards the front of the project, as well as some of the retrofit and other interior work that's ongoing. Next. We're actively working on our annual sewer improvement project, not the county one. This is on the city's lines. CIP 421 is a citywide project, so there were a number of different components. We completed the initial CCTV inspection. There was access hole repairs that they did and other point repairs through the city, and now they've moved into the next phase of doing sewer line replacement. The current area of work is on 10th, 11th, and 11th Place, and these are full replacements adjacent to the existing sewer line, which would then be abandoned. And that is ongoing. So they'll be at this location, and then we'll move to a different location in the city later on. So we'll continue to notify the residents as we get through there into each spot as the phases advance. Next. We're about 15% complete on that project and still targeting tentatively about April, May for the project for completion. Next. Our Greenbelt pedestrian trail across the street from City Hall. This is to advance the ADA path on the Greenbelt from 8th Street to Pierre Avenue. Several weeks ago, we opened the first phase of the project to the general public to walk on the new decomposed granite path, DG path. You can actually access the location from 8th Street up to about 11th Street. All the irrigation work was completed there, the new gym equipment's in place, new trees, new plantings, particularly near the 8th Street southern end. And the crews are now focused on the northern half between 11th and Pierre Avenue. They've nearly completed the installation of the DG material on the northern half. They have most of the gym equipment set up on the north, and they're still have landscape work to do. One of the final phases that they'll have is the striping around the project, including updates to the crosswalk between Greenbelt and Clark Building, and then the concrete work for some of the ramps along the periphery of the project, which is going to be one of the last components that they do. We are looking at potential completion as soon as the end of the month or early February, but we're getting close. Next. And this is just another slide to show that schedule and what it's looking like on the northern half of the path as they lay down that base material. And the DG is actually installed. I think this was from earlier in the week or at the end of last week, the photo that's shown. Next. CIP 624, I'm pleased to say that since our last Public Works Commission meeting, we started the project and have finished it. This was a small project, had a handful of curb ramps and sidewalk panels on Valley Drive, right in front of City Hall, and further down near South Park, as well as a few select panels on Monterey. But that project was, most of the construction work was all completed taking advantage of the Thanksgiving break when pedestrian activity was a little bit lower on Valley Drive because we're concerned about allowing school children a safe place to walk to school, so we're able to take advantage of that break. And they completed all the striping work the following week or two after that. So we're happy We're now in project closeout, but that project is now substantially complete. Next.
Can I just say a quick question while
Sure.
you have the picture up? Can you go back to the picture?
Yeah.
Are the truncated domes, they don't look like that now, do they?
I believe they were cleaned after that.
Okay, I just
don't
wasn't sure if
believe
that was like new or old, or it was just, there was concrete from the pour.
That was a
but-
midway.
Okay, yeah, okay, I'll look
You're
at
going to
them.
have me go look now.
I know,
after.
I'm walking home, I'll look at it on the way out.
Okay, I want to give an update on our sidewalk improvement project. So we did phase this project. There's an early phase to address 2 locations of higher priority. We had a public hearing here at Public Works Commission several months ago now about the removal of 2 trees on 24th Street near Palm Drive, which have created substantial uplift to the sidewalk and at the curb ramp. This project does require removal of those 2 trees to construct an accessible ramp to current standards and replace the panels. There's also a section of sidewalk that is in need of replacement on 21st Street, just south of PCH. This is on the southern side of 21st Street, where we would reconstruct the sidewalk and also expand it into the parkway so that there's a wider sidewalk and to improve the parkway condition as well on that roadway. Both of these are slated to start tentatively on Tuesday, which include the tree removal and the concrete work.
And if I could make a comment about the 24th Street at Palm, the neighborhood thanks the Public Works Department. There'd been people who had fallen at that particular corner, and of course then we have individuals who are ADA, and they could never even go down there. So the neighborhood thanks you.
I do have a few
It
more.
was an awful area.
Yeah, no,
Anyway,
the city has also received a number of complaints, especially at 24th and Palm.
Yeah.
So we're excited to be able to get this done finally.
Yes.
If we go to the next slide. I want to, last evening at City Council, Council approved the award of a contract for our annual storm drain improvement. This is our Bard Street and Oak Street. And this is to address a significant amount of stormwater runoff that was going directly into the Marineland Mobile Home Park. This would add a catch basin and a new connection and an access hole to the storm drain line at that corner to help catch that rainwater and help mitigate the impacts to that adjacent residential neighborhood. So that was awarded last night. We're looking to start construction hopefully as soon as February, and it's only going to take about a month or 2 to really complete that work.
Can I jump in on this one? So I saw the presentation last night and I read the staff report, and there were some things that I liked about this in terms of budget. One, it was good to see that we got a lot of bids, and hopefully that bodes well for the future in terms of having a lot of companies out there that can support us and also have some competition maybe to help keep our costs down. And it also looks like, based on the bid we got, it was low enough that we, by my calculations, ought to be able to perhaps return some funds back to the storm drain fund. It looked like in this case, you budgeted just the right amount to cover perhaps the worst case, because there were some bids that were high enough that they could have pushed it to the limit if those were the only bids we'd gotten. So, it seemed like it was just right that you had enough to cover yourself in terms of the uncertainty, but at the same time, things worked out in the end. And it'd be great if the whole process could work that way on all of our projects. So it was kind of a good model cost-wise, in my opinion, there. Thank you.
No, thank you. Yeah, we had about $440,000 budget in the CIP, so you're absolutely correct, Commissioner Grayson. We did try to have enough wiggle room in there. As we were designing it, there was some uncertainty in what the full scope would be and what kind of bids we would get with a small project for it. So you're absolutely correct. Anything that is remaining would be sent back into the fund balance. So we're definitely glad to see it come within cost. Next. So I want to talk about what's coming. There are four projects, but 5 CIPs that are very significant. These 5 account for almost $7 million in construction that's coming. So we have a lot of work that's underway now, and there's a lot of work coming that we are working very hard to sequence in coordination with utility providers like the sanitation district that came tonight, as well as just general overall impact to the community, because a lot of these are going to be impactful, and we are trying to get the word out as much as we can. The first one, the annual street improvement project, which was combined with Lot A, this is citywide paving. So there's a number of residential streets through the city. It accounts for almost 2 miles of roadway in the city, but the high impact locations are Pier Avenue for its length, and where we have dining decks that are going to need to be temporarily removed. And overall, there will be impact because there will be significant full parking loss during that time. So we're working to sequence that work as tight as we can. And as we get additional schedule information, we'll be working on much more outreach to the downtown of what the exact impacts are going to be as we start to nail down that schedule. Lot A is a very busy parking lot. And then we're also going to include resurfacing of Valley Drive from Pier Avenue all the way south to the city limits. So right now we're wrapping up Greenbelt, which should be finished, but Clark Building construction will be ongoing through April. Meanwhile, if you go to number 3, we have Kelly Courts improvements that's out to bid. That's slated to start sometime in the spring, so that will be adjacent to potential paving work, as well as an active field where we have Little League and other activities. And then further down the street, we're also looking at South Park slope and irrigation repairs. This would, work on all new irrigation and stabilizing the slope on the north side of the park. This is north of the main field, but that work is also good. We're going to have to work on scheduling that and phasing it as well. But these are all things that are coming. I have some news today on number 1. All of our bids were due today, and we got 7 bids received. And I'll report our engineer's estimate was $3.3 million, and the apparent low bid at this time, and I'm going to say the apparent low bid because we do need to go through in much more detail to qualify them, but they range between 3.2 and about 3.7 million. So currently it looks like we have bids that came within, but we do have to do a much more detailed bid analysis before bringing that for potential contract award, likely next month. The Lot C structure also is downtown. We have 2 different things that are happening at Lot C. There is an elevator refurbishment, which we have contracted out separately. That contract was awarded in December, where we have an elevator specialist that can come in and do that refurbishment. The work was so unique that we did not want to bid it with the structural repairs. And we also wanted to get it out a little bit earlier because there are long lead time items for the doors are what we're hearing are the longest lead time for the elevators. So that contract, we're getting it started. There's abatement work that needs to be done before we can actually get a lot of the refurbishment work completed on that. So there will be some intermittent disruption as we do the various work, the abatement, and then the eventual refurbishment. The structural repair bids are due in the middle of February, and so this is really going through the structure, doing deck repairs, both on the floor and the ceiling, as well as substantial improvements to the lighting inside the facility. So these are really high priority things that need to be done to that facility. And going on to the next slide.
Chair Hayes and Joe,
Sure.
I had a couple of prepared comments on these projects, so would now be a good time for that?
If you like to, or I have, I think, one more slide
Okay,
update, and then we
I'll-
could maybe go into that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to give just a few more project updates. Pier structural inspection. So this is another big project that's coming. We've been working very closely with our structural engineering team. They concluded all the visual observations in November, December. They went out in mid-December and they did the underwater diving inspection. So far, what we're seeing with the diving inspection was The diving inspection brought back good news is that we were seeing that most of the repairs that we did to the piles or the columns under the pier were very successful. We caught most of the issues on the piles. But what we are going to need to do is significant repairs to the deck itself. And we always knew that that was going to be the next project because the first one that we just completed was under the pier, and now we're going to move on to the deck. And this is both the deck panel above and below. So we are sorting through the results of that. There's some additional testing that we're working with the structural engineering team on completing to confirm the results and verify what type of scope of work we will have. And we're also working with them on a bit of a cost-benefit analysis to determine what repairs should be expedited and those that could wait. So there's a lot more information coming, but this is going to be a fairly costly repair that is in our very near future to maintain the integrity of the pier. Good news is there's no restrictions that are put on the pier, so the pier is safe, it's open for use, and there's no added vehicle restrictions. So I want everyone to know that there is a sigh of relief there, that there's nothing bad that caused us to change any restrictions. For example, when we did do inspections last go around, we did reduce the weight limit on the structure, largely because this is an aging structure. There was a 10,000-pound vehicle weight limit originally, and we reduced that to 5,000 pounds. That was put in place prior to the previous round of repairs that were done over a year ago, and those remain in effect. But the good news is at this time, we don't see any reason why we have to change those weight load restrictions. The 5,000 pounds is about the size of a pickup truck, which is currently what we use to do all the maintenance operations on that facility. The next two projects I want to bring up, because we are actively working on seeking additional funding through the South Bay Coalition of Governments, through their annual Measure M application process, which is a competitive grant process through the SB COG members. Our PCH Aviation Mobility Study, we currently do have funds that are programmed through the COG with Metro. Metro is administering that grant and the project, and that includes looking at all safety aspects of PCH from Artesia to the southern city limit, as well as aviation from PCH to Prospect Avenue. We do need additional funds to complete the current environmental phase that was started by Metro's consultant, but temporarily paused as we really looked at what was needed to advance the project to the next piece. So we are seeking those additional funds so the project environmental phase and alternative analysis can continue. Those applications are actually due tomorrow, and we'll be working with the COG to see where we fall with that so that project can continue. Our other project, bus stop safety and the pedestrian safety improvement project, we had installed rectangular rapid flashing beacons and signage as part of a phase one. The second phase is always going to look at the larger infrastructure improvements. We do think that this is a really good fit for competitive grant application through the COG. So we are also submitting an application for that as well. We would not hear on either of these if we're going to be competitive or successful until April with a potential award or actual funding receipt till the very end of 2025, likely fall, September, or even January the following year. So these do take time, but I want to give an update on the work that we're doing to try to get some funding in and move these 2 or 3 projects forward. And I think that's all I have in here for the night, and happy to answer any questions.
I need to excuse myself. I'm having some physical problems, and I don't think I can sit much longer, so I'm going to excuse myself.
Any comments or questions about the CIP report?
Yes. So I guess I'll work my way back in reverse order to that Joe talked into him. So let's see. You talked about the your last 2 projects were the traffic safety, pedestrian crossing safety, And you also made reference to the PCH mobility, and both of those were working with the COG to get funding. And so I noticed, and I'm already familiar that typically, like in the PCH mobility, we get these Measure R or Measure M funds, and you describe that, and there's a process we have to go through. The monthly report, when it talks about the pedestrian safety crossing project, it talks about grant funds. So are those different funds from the Measure M or Measure R, or is that the same exact process? Or do they facilitate, us getting other types of grants from other places besides Metro or Measure M or R funds?
Thank you, Commissioner Griffin. So the SB COG and their members, the COG has a variety of funds that are Measure R and Measure M. And there is a competitive process where you do have to apply, so they are treated like grant funds. If you're awarded and you have to compete against other COG members for those funds, then Metro steps in to help administer those funding through a Metro agreement. So the agreement would end up being through the city and Metro at that time. But it is a competitive process, so this is a regional pull. So, for example, the city did receive already a substantial amount, about $1.8 million in Measure M funds for the PCH aviation mobility study. That was the initial funds to kick off that process. But really to do it right and what we need to do for the scale of the project, we do need additional funds. So we're seeking, in this case, Measure M. And there are different criteria for the different M or R. And so the funding that we're looking for is M. There is discussion at the COG level about a formula-based local return amount through Measure M that may begin as soon as next year. And so there is that discussion. It's based on, I think, road miles. So the good news is that in the future, it sounds like we will be receiving a formula-based Measure M guaranteed amount every year. I don't know what the total amount is that our share would be, but there would still be this competitive pot that you can apply for, and there are criteria for that, so you have to check the boxes to be able to be competitive to receive it.
So a couple aspects. It just so happens that today I also reviewed the agenda from the COGS Transportation Committee, and they talked about this going in a direction of reserving about 10% of the funds and putting it into this pool of the local funds, and then you'd be able to get a certain amount of them. Basically, and there's a couple things. It's partly your road miles and maybe sort of population base and so on. So I'm glad you brought that up. And I don't know the numbers they had in there. I think it depends on how much total we actually get to start with. So it looked like it was on the order of a few $100,000 per year, but I couldn't hold you to that. But back to my question then, you're saying that it would be those same Measure M type funds and that same competitive process for the pedestrian safety CIP, just like we're doing for the PCH mobility CIP.
Exactly. So there's no guarantee that we'll get it. So we're requesting a funding amendment for the PCH project, which would be in addition, but it's a new request for the PED safety project in Hermosa Avenue. Both would go in. The city has to pick priorities of which one we want. There's no guarantee that funding would be available. I think the COG does try to distribute the funds as equitably as they can, and it also depends on how much in each quarter or fiscal year is in there. And so there could be certain years that are tighter. There could be a request that says, hey, we have funding in 2 years, but not next year. Would that work for your schedule? So we're hopeful that we could help supplement that budget so it could free up some of the funds that we have dedicated to that CIP that could be used for other projects in the city. Because we do think it's a good candidate for that type of an application.
Yeah. And by the way, I don't know if that local with 10% will actually be active until next year at the earliest, so we'll have to check on that as well. Okay, so that's what I had on that. Going back to Lot C, I just had a small question. Besides the big contract we're going to let for the structural repairs, I saw that you went ahead with some elevator modernization. So my question there had to do with, is this something you're able to go ahead and do without going to council because perhaps it was under some threshold? And I know we recently did some streamlining of our processes along those lines.
That's correct. So last year, we updated our procurement policies to align with newer provisions in the public contract code, which we, in short, are called the alternative bidding procedure. So the elevator modernization fell within the $60,000 to $200,000 threshold that we still are required to prepare drawings, go out to advertise. So this is advertised on Planet Bids and sent to trade journals. I believe the project cost for the modernization is about $120,000 in that range. So anything under $200,000, we don't need to do formal contract award at City Council. It is under City Manager's authority to execute that contract.
Okay. And then I'm going to go back to the CIP 105, the street paving. I appreciate you volunteering what information you could about that we got a lot of bids and that we may be somewhere on the order of what the estimate was. And I understand that you really do need to go through that formal process, so it's too early to know exactly. As I think about this, one question I would have is, do we expect that construction management for that will be done in-house, or we'll have to allocate funds for that outside?
So it's likely we're going to have to be, our staff, when I say we, will be significantly involved just given how sensitive these areas are that we're going into. So we'll probably do the management itself, but we may bring in supplemental inspection services just given the breadth of the project because this is a big project. There may be, at this time, I think we will have some supplemental services. So to be determined, but I believe so.
Yeah, and the reason I asked, when I looked at the monthly CIP financial report that's each month at the council, usually I believe it's at the second meeting, it looked like as of end November there was still maybe 3.95 million available, and so we're in the ballpark between some of the numbers you're throwing around. So, we're close. It looks like. So I'll be looking forward to seeing how it all shakes out. Right. And I had another comment, unless you wanted to respond to that.
I actually just wanted to add something to that, too. You're correct. I think we had budgeted about almost $4 million for this. We put in as much money into paving as we could. So fingers crossed that we're able to award to one of the lower bidders that will give us some flexibility for contingency or to potentially put funds back into the general fund or into the CIP fund, I should say. One thing that I want to highlight is that we've brought in some really talented team members that they designed this project almost entirely in-house. So we're able to save substantially on the soft costs for design by some of the great skills that we brought in-house with our really, really great engineers that joined the team.
Nice.
I think we had to do some pavement cores. We had to bring in specialists to do those cores to get data and information, but almost all of it was done in-house.
All right. And then my prepared remark on this project before we got into the, how close we're going to do on the budget was when you presented the schedule at the CIP study session last April or so, we didn't even know that we were going to execute on this as soon as we are. And, and even if you weren't going to guarantee we were executing in this fiscal year, you still had the foresight to procure those funds so that we have those. And now, as it turns out, you are able to move forward with those funds in place. So that, I'm really happy to see that. And that's my prepared comment on that one. And then I just had a go back on the Greenbelt, if I may. You showed a photograph there, and I went out and walked and saw what we had at the south end that's done. And there's still some sort of that light orange plastic type fencing up there, and there's some other fencing. And so what I'm trying to understand is if we go out there right now and look around where we can see, is that pretty much what it looks like? In other words, is it just the access ramps and things like that need to be added, or is there more as far as the appearance goes that needs to be done out there?
Right. So the path itself, the path is done on that southern section. I'd say one thing I will alert everybody is that we've had a lot of debris. There was a lot of wind, so there was a lot of things from the trees that dropped and then the ash deposit. So once things subside a little bit and towards the end of the project, we'll try to clean off the path. But really, this is just it looks like a natural material that's out there. There isn't much more to do out there. The one thing behind the reason why we have the orange fencing is we did hydro seed on adjacent. So we want to leave the fencing up until the grass can establish. So I think the one thing that you will see is just some natural grasses that are going to grow in and fill in some of that area that we graded between the path and the roadway. But otherwise, all the plants are in, the trees are in that southern section. So it's nearly complete, but I think it's going to look a little bit cleaner once the grass comes in and the fencing comes down and we get a chance to clean it.
Okay, so with a little imagination and positive view, we can get a good idea how things may be. Yeah. Great.
Yeah. We just didn't want to leave it closed if we could open it up. And I think it helps get people to the gym equipment and start to see what's coming. But there was no reason to keep it all fenced up if we could actually open up a piece.
Great, thank you. That's all.
Any other questions or comments? The only thing I'll say is that you guys are getting a ton of stuff done. It looks great. I mean, I just did a quick, you're definitely touching more projects than you're not touching in a given month. And the progress is great.
Yes, and I'm amazed too at what's happening. Great.
Anything else? Are we done with CIP? All right, public comment. No one is in chambers, so there is none. Commissioner comments, response to public comments. There were none. Any brief announcements? Any reports on liaison or subcommittee roles, activities, or meetings attended? Brief comments on matters within the subject matter of the commission.
I had a comment/question. And I'm curious, so first, I'm really devastated at the losses we've seen in the city due to the fires. I have friends and colleagues who've lost their homes and everything in an extremely short period of time. And one of the things I'm thinking, just going forwards, because in a few months and the next few years, there's going to be a lot of need for contractors, construction. I don't know if those are going to be coming in from out of state or from other places, or if that will affect us, if we need to share resources, if that might delay certain projects or things. I just wanted to bring it up as a potential contingency we need to plan for and accommodate. I understand that they need to be the focus right now, but we also have our agenda and our plans as well, and our budget.
All right, moving on to the consent calendar. Does anybody have any comments on the items on the consent calendar, or do we have a motion?
I'll move, did we want to do a motion on each set of action?
Microphone.
Usually I leave it on the whole time. Tonight I've worked on turning it off, and then I don't turn it back on again. Yes, do you want one motion for
If there's
both?
no comments, then I would suggest that we just move to approve the consent calendar.
Okay,
I
I
so
have no
move.
comments.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
In what?
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, roll call, please.
Or-
Oh, we're doing it. Don't say roll call. Oh, darn it.
All right, motion carries unanimously. Moving on, we had no items removed from the consent calendar, no public hearings, matters for the commission, retirement of the Parks Master Plan Subcommittee.
Okay. So at its March 15, 2023 meeting, the commission had selected Vice Person Commissioner Hayes and Commissioners Grayson to serve on the Parks Master Plan Committee. They served on that committee for several months, and at the November City Council meeting, the eventual master plan that came out of that process was adopted. So at this time, there's really no additional work needed for that subcommittee. So our recommended action is to retire that subcommittee.
Any comments or questions?
I just had a few comments. I did go to the parks today just to revisit what's been done, and went to Seaview Park, and of course they have all the solar panels in there. And Matthew, who is one of our employees at Public Works, he was there and he explained to me everything that's required at Seaview Park as far as the electricity using it from the solar panels. It's totally amazing. And then I went to Fort Lots of Fun. I do have questions, and I don't know if this was really included in y'all's work or not, but is the gate at Fort Lots of Fun, is it going to be redone?
So I know you're talking about the big wooden gate.
The big
on
wood,
the north
yes,
side.
yes.
So the Parks Master Plan didn't get into that level of detail.
Okay.
It's a higher level plan, but we did include all the currently program projects and those that are known but potentially unfunded or future projects. And so we do have one of our CIPs, I believe, does look at the wall and the gate for the design only, but we don't have funds at this time dedicated for the future replacement. We need to start the design. The wall does need repair, and the gate will need likely replacement, full replacement. I think it's beyond repair at this time.
I agree.
So I think our plan is once that CIP begins, is to initiate the design where we can further flesh out what the true costs are going to be for that project.
Okay, and I did realize that it didn't get that deep into the projects, but I was just curious if any work was going to be done on them. And then just as also visited, went to Valley Park, and is there anything about the restrooms needing refreshing in Valley Park, or has that been talked about at all?
So we have gotten some requests. I think one thing that we're looking at is potentially refinishing the floor and
Yes.
some other painting in there. I don't have a schedule for it, but it has been an item that's been discussed for maintenance activities.
Yes. Okay, thank you. My apologies for bringing this up right now, but we were talking about the parks and just, it was an opportunity. So, and thank you for all y'all's work on this particular committee.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I wanted just to formally thank both of you for your contributions and for
Yes.
stepping up and participating. I know it's a lot of work, it's a lot of time, lots of documentation, and I think the results we came up with were excellent. I think it really served the community well. So I just wanted to put that on the record to thank you both for your service.
It
Yes.
was a pleasure to be a part of it.
And they look great, and yes, totally agree.
All right, do we have a motion? Oh, do we need public comment? There is no public comment in here. Do we have any public comment online?
There is no one online.
All right, do we have a motion?
I'll move that we retire the Parks Master Plan Subcommittee, as long as the Master Parks Subcommittee is there any more that y'all would like to do? Nope, okay.
I would second.
All right. Any comments? Let's vote. All right. The motion carries 4-0.
And once again, thank you. Good job,
Thank you.
David and Scott.
All right. Future agenda items. Does anybody have any future agenda items? There's no public comment because we didn't run over our 30 minutes earlier. And so that brings us to adjournment. See everybody in March. Happy New Year.